The fluorescent lights hummed their familiar tune in the empty corridors of Sterling Industries' 42nd floor, casting long shadows that danced across polished marble. At 11:47 p.m., the building should have been a tomb of corporate ambition, silent except for the whisper of climate control and the distant rumble of traffic 42 floors below. But tonight, Marcus Sterling, worth $3.2 billion and counting, lay motionless on his office couch, his breathing deliberately shallow. His eyes closed but his mind razor sharp. He was hunting for truth in the most unlikely place, the honest heart of a stranger. 3 months earlier, Marcus had received an anonymous letter that shattered his carefully constructed world. Typed on company stationery, it detailed every corrupt deal his board members had made, every bribe his executives had taken, every corner they'd cut that put workers at risk. But what haunted him wasn't the corruption he'd suspected that for months. What haunted him was the final line: the only honest people left in this building wear janitor uniforms and security badges. Maybe you should try being human again before you lose what's left of your soul. The letter wasn't signed, but Marcus had traced it back to Elena Vasquez, a night janitor who'd worked in his building for 8 years. A single mother from Guatemala who cleaned toilets for executives who made more in a day than Shay earned in a decade. When he'd tried to approach her, she'd quit without notice, leaving behind only a son who'd taken her place, a young man named Diego who needed the job to pay for community college. So here Marcus lay, pretending to sleep, waiting to see what this janitor's son would do when he thought no one was watching. Would Diego rifle through his desk, photograph confidential documents, steal something valuable? After 30 years of cutthroat business, Marcus expected the worst from everyone. Tonight, he was testing whether any goodness remained in his sterile world. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, soft, respectful, careful not to disturb. The office door opened with a gentle whisper, and Marcus fought to keep his breathing steady. Through barely cracked eyelids, he watched a young man enter, maybe 22 or 23, with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of honest work. Diego pushed a cleaning cart loaded with supplies, his movements efficient but unhurried. The young man began cleaning with a meticulousness that surprised Marcus. Diego didn't just empty trash bins, he organized scattered papers into neat piles, aligned pens in their holders, even watered the neglected plant by the window that Marcus had forgotten existed. Every action was performed with quiet dignity, as if the office belonged to someone Diego genuinely cared about. But it was what happened next that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. Diego noticed Marcus lying on the couch and froze. For a long moment, he simply stood there, cleaning cloth in hand, watching the rise and fall of Marcus's chest. Then, moving with extraordinary gentleness, Diego retrieved a blanket from the office closet, one Marcus kept for the rare nights he slept at work, and carefully draped it over his sleeping form. The young man paused, studying Marcus's face in the dim light. "You look tired, sir," he whispered, so quietly Marcus almost couldn't hear. "Really tired? Like you're carrying the whole world." Diego continued his cleaning, but now his movements were even more careful. Muffled, he adjusted the blinds to block the harsh streetlight outside. He dimmed the office lights to their lowest setting. When the air conditioning kicked in with its usual aggressive blast, Diego found the thermostat and adjusted it to a gentler temperature. Marcus had to bite the inside of his cheek to keep from revealing himself. No, not his ex-wife, not his own children, not his closest friends had shown him such simple, unrequested kindness in years. This young man, who had every reason to resent the billionaire who represented everything he couldn't have, was treating him with the tenderness of a son caring for his father. But Diego wasn't finished. From his cleaning cart, he pulled out a small notebook and began writing. Marcus strained to see, his curiosity overwhelming his pretense. The young man wrote for several minutes, occasionally glancing at Marcus's sleeping form, his expression thoughtful and sad. When Diego finished writing, he carefully placed the note on Marcus's desk, weighted down with a paperweight so it wouldn't blow away. Then he did something that nearly broke Marcus's carefully maintained facade. Diego knelt beside the couch and, with infinite gentleness, adjusted the blanket to make sure Marcus's feet were covered. "I hope you find some peace, sir," Diego whispered. "Whatever's keeping you up nights, I hope it gets better." The young man gathered his supplies and left as quietly as he'd arrived, pulling the office door closed with barely a sound. Marcus lay in the darkness for a full 10 minutes, his heart hammering against his ribs, before he finally sat up and reached for the note. The handwriting was careful, educated despite the humble circumstances that had shaped it. "Mr. Sterling, I know you probably won't read this, but I wanted to say something. My mom used to clean your office before me. She told me you work too hard, sleep too little, and carry too much weight on your shoulders. She said successful people often forget to take care of themselves because they're too busy taking care of business. I don't know what keeps you here so late, but I hope you know that tomorrow is another chance to find joy in something small. There's a coffee shop on 5th Street called Maria's. My aunt runs it. They make the best café copyright conlesh in the city, and they open at 6 a.m. Maybe sometime you could try being just a person who enjoys good coffee instead of a CEO who carries the world. Everyone deserves simple happiness, even billionaires." Diego. Marcus read the note 3 times, his hands trembling slightly. In 30 years of business, he'd received 1,000-page contracts, merger proposals worth billions, and resignation letters from people he'd trusted. But no document had ever moved him like these few sentences written on notebook paper by a janitor's son who earned minimum wage. The next morning, at exactly 6 a.m., Marcus Sterling, a worth $3.2 billion and CEO of a Fortune 500 company, walked into Maria's coffee shop wearing jeans and a simple button-down shirt. He ordered a café copyright conlesh from Diego's aunt, a warm woman with silver hair and knowing eyes who seemed unsurprised to see him. "You must be the man my nephew wrote about," she said, handing him the steaming cup. "He said you looked like someone who'd forgotten how to rest." Marcus sipped the coffee, rich, sweet, perfecto, and felt something inside his chest loosen for the first time in months. "Your nephew," he said carefully, "is a remarkable young man." Maria smiled. "He gets that from his mother. She always said the measure of a person isn't how they treat those who can help them, but how they treat those who can't." That afternoon, Marcus called Diego into his office. The young man arrived nervous, clearly expecting to be fired for some perceived transgression. Instead, he found Marcus holding a scholarship letter. "I'm establishing an educational fund," Marcus explained, watching Diego's eyes widen. "Full tuition, books, living expenses. You'll study business if you want, or engineering, or whatever calls to you. The only requirement is that you remember what your mother taught you about treating people with dignity." Diego stared at the letter, tears flowing freely. "Mr. Sterling, I can't accept this. It's too much." "It's not nearly enough," Marcus replied quietly. "Your mother's letter changed everything. Your kindness last night saved something in me I thought was lost forever." "This scholarship isn't charity, Diego. It's an investment in the kind of person this company needs leading it someday." 6 months later, Marcus stood before his board of directors and announced the largest corporate restructuring in Sterling Industries history. Corrupt executives were terminated, ethical oversight committees were established, worker safety protocols were revolutionized. The company's mission statement was rewritten to prioritize people over profit margins. The changes cost Sterling Industries nearly $50 million in the first quarter. Marcus's personal net worth dropped by $800 million as stock prices initially fell. The business press called him naive. Competitors whispered that he'd lost his edge. But something extraordinary happened. Employee satisfaction soared, customer loyalty strengthened, innovation flourished in an environment where people felt valued rather than exploited. Within 18 months, Sterling Industries was more profitable than ever, and Marcus had earned something worth far more than money, the respect of people who worked not because they had to, but because they wanted to contribute to something meaningful. Diego graduated summa cum laude 3 years later with degrees in business and social justice. His first day as Sterling Industries' youngest ever vice president of employee relations, he found a note on his desk written in familiar handwriting. Diego, your mother was right. The measure of a person is how they treat those who can't help them. But I learned something else from you. Sometimes the people who can't help us are actually the ones who save us. Thank you for reminding a forgotten billionaire how to be human again. The world needs more people like you and your mother. Marcus. That evening, as Marcus walked through the office building he'd once seen as a monument to his success, he noticed things he'd been blind to for years. He saw Maria organizing papers with the same care Diego had shown. He saw security guards who nodded respectfully because they genuinely respected him, not just his wealth. He saw a company filled with people who came to work each day knowing their dignity mattered. In his office, Marcus kept Diego's original note framed on his desk, next to a photo of himself and Diego at graduation. Visitors often asked about it, expecting some story of shrewd business acquisition or strategic partnership. Instead, Marcus would smile and tell them about the night a janitor's son taught a billionaire that the most valuable currency in the world isn't money, it's the simple, radical act of treating every human being as if their heart matters. Sometimes the greatest fortunes are found not in bank accounts, but in the unexpected kindness of strangers who choose to see our humanity when we've forgotten it ourselves. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, a young man with calloused hands and a tender heart will adjust our blanket in the darkness and remind us that every near-even billionaire deserves simple compassion. The fluorescent lights still hummed their familiar tune in the corridors of Sterling Industries, but now they illuminated something different, a company where success was measured not just in profit margins, but in the number of lives touched with dignity, respect, and the revolutionary belief that every person who walked through those doors carried something precious, a story worth honoring, a dream worth nurturing, and a heart worth protecting.